There's a prayer, ancient, powerful. Once a year, the high priest would enter the Holy of Holies and speak these words, "May this year be one where Israel depends on no nation, only God." That was 2,000 years ago. The temple is gone, but the prayer, it just became urgent again. September 18th, 2024. A blood moon rises over Jerusalem. 48 hours later, Rosh Hashana begins, the Day of Judgment. While Israel observes these holiest days, the United Nations is voting to recognize Palestine as a state, to divide the land. The exact land that, according to the prophet Joel, God warned nations never to touch. Joel chapter 3. I will gather all nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. There I will put them on trial for what they did to my inheritance, my people Israel. Because they scattered my people among the nations and divided up my land. The coalition forming against Israel matches, name for name, a prophecy written 2,600 years ago by Ezekiel. Iran, Turkey, Libya, Sudan, nations that hated each other throughout history, all unified against Israel. The blood moon appeared. Earthquakes started. The coalition formed. What happens in the next 72 hours will either confirm or destroy a 2,600-year-old prophecy. Rosh Hashana is a countdown. The Jewish people call it Yom Hadin, the Day of Judgment. 10 days where heaven and earth supposedly hold their breath. It ends with Yom Kippur, when the book of life and death gets sealed. But there's another layer. Rosh Hashana is connected to the coming of the Messiah. Jewish texts teach the Messiah will arrive when Israel stands alone, when nations gather against Jerusalem. Look at what's happening during these exact 10 days. Instead of standing with Israel during its holiest season, nations are gathering at the United Nations to divide Israeli territory. They're unilaterally declaring a Palestinian state on land that was never theirs to give. Joel warned about this exact scenario. God would judge the nations specifically for dividing his land. And that judgment comes during a time when Israel should be experiencing protection, not persecution. The ground is already shaking, literally. The blood moon appeared September 18th, 2024, 48 hours before Rosh Hashana. Joel chapter 2. The sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. In the 72 hours surrounding Rosh Hashana, seismic activity spiked globally. Japan, Chile, Turkey, New Zealand, California, Indonesia, 6 continents, not a single megaquake, but a pattern, a rumbling. Then there's Ezekiel 38, written 2,600 years ago, describing a future war involving specific nations attacking Israel. Magog, Persia, Cush, Put, Gomer, Beth Togarmah. Scholars mapped them. Magog, Turkey, Persia, Iran, Cush, Sudan, Put, Libya, Gomer and Beth Togarmah, more Turkey. Notice the pattern? Turkey appears multiple times. Iran is central. These are nations that had no reason to unite throughout history. Different empires, different religions within Islam. Ezekiel says this coalition will come like a cloud covering the land in the latter days, when Israel is gathered back in its land. The coalition Ezekiel described is forming right now. For 1,400 years, Shia and Sunni Muslims have been violently divided. The Iran-Iraq War, 1980 to 1988, 8 years, over 1 million dead. Shia Iran versus Sunni Iraq. That's how deep the hatred runs. Syria's civil war, Sunni rebels backed by Turkey fighting Shia forces backed by Iran. Yemen, Sunni-Saudi coalition bombing Shia rebels. The division has been the Middle East's defining feature for over a millennium. Until now. Reports indicate unprecedented communication between Shia Iran and Sunni Turkey. Not diplomacy. Coordination. Turkey's Erdogan publicly declared Hamas, a Sunni organization, are freedom fighters. Iran, the Shia powerhouse, has funded Hamas for years. Israel eliminated senior Hamas leadership in Qatar. Iran condemned it. Turkey condemned it. Libya condemned it. Sudan condemned it. The coalition isn't theoretical anymore. It's operational. Erdogan has another ambition: restoring the Ottoman Empire, bringing back Turkish dominance over the Middle East, including Jerusalem. The Shia-Sunni alliance was considered the biggest obstacle to any unified action against Israel. That obstacle just disappeared. When hatred of Israel becomes greater than hatred of each other, impossible things become possible. Every year on Yom Kippur, the high priest would pray, "May the coming year be one in which Israel will not be dependent on other nations, dependent only on God." That prayer hasn't been prayed in a physical temple for 2,000 years. But this year, during these days of awe, it feels like prophecy. Because right now, Israel stands nearly alone. The United States remains an ally, but support is wavering. European nations are racing to recognize Palestine. The UN Security Council is preparing resolutions. Israel's closest partners are urging Israel to stop just before the finish line. And where is Israel in the fight? Days away from victory. Hamas has approximately 4,000 fighters left in the deepest tunnels in Rafah. Israel has been pushing toward this moment since October 7th. Months of combat, thousands of casualties, international condemnation at every turn. Right as Hamas is cornered, right as the terrorist organization is on the verge of collapse, the world is screaming for Israel to stop. The timing is too precise, the pressure too coordinated. Hamas leaders themselves said, when the world recognizes Palestine, it rewards what Hamas did on October 7th. It legitimizes the massacre. It tells every terrorist organization that if you kill enough Jews, the world will give you a country. Israel is fighting two battles, one on the ground in Gaza, one in the unseen realm where nations, powers, and ancient prophecies collide. If Israel stops now, evil wins. Here's what's happening right now, during the holiest 10 days on the Jewish calendar. The UN is moving forward with recognizing Palestine, not through negotiation, not through peace, unilaterally, by vote. And there's no plan, no borders, no government structure, no infrastructure, no security agreement, purely symbolic, purely political, and according to Joel, purely forbidden. Joel chapter 3 doesn't mince words. God says he will judge the nations for dividing his land, not warn gently. Judge. The kind of judgment that ends empires. This is the modern Tower of Babel. Humanity declaring they have authority over divine boundaries. Nations saying, "We decide what belongs to whom. We will carve up the land." And it's happening during Yom Hadin. While God is supposedly rendering judgment, the nations are rendering their own judgment against Israel, against the land, against the very promises written in ancient texts. This is the convergence. Blood moon, earthquakes, coalition forming, Hamas on the verge of defeat, Palestine recognition moving forward, all happening in a 10-day window that's been sacred for over 3,000 years. You can call it coincidence, you can call it geopolitics, but the pattern is undeniable. Ezekiel's coalition is forming. Joel's warning is being ignored. Rosh Hashana prayers are being answered. Israel is being forced to depend only on God because every other nation is turning away. If these prophecies are real, the next phase isn't political, it's apocalyptic. Ezekiel says God himself will intervene. That fire will rain down on invading armies. That nations will know he is Lord. Either that happens, or thousands of years of prophecy crumble into nothing. We're watching the setup. The pieces are on the board. The players are in position. 3 things to watch in the next 72 hours. First, the UN vote. Reports suggest it could happen this week. If it passes, the division of the land becomes official. Joel's warning becomes active. Second, Israel's final push into Rafah. Those 4,000 Hamas fighters are cornered. If Israel completes the mission, Hamas is done. If the world forces Israel to stop, October 7th gets rewarded. Third, the coalition's next move. Iran has been quiet. Too quiet. Turkey is positioning forces along its southern border. Hezbollah has 150,000 rockets aimed at northern Israel. Ezekiel says the coalition will come like a cloud covering the land. Massive, overwhelming, unstoppable by human means. Rosh Hashana ends in 48 hours. Yom Kippur comes 10 days after. The book of life and death gets sealed. Decisions get made by nations, by leaders, by forces seen and unseen that will determine what the next decade looks like. This isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of something much bigger. Updates coming as they happen. What unfolds next will either confirm everything or